Well, welcome everybody to this latest episode of the Entrepreneur MD podcast. And we are really excited to welcome the folks from Wellai. Sergey and Daniel are going to be talking to us a little bit today about how they're bringing artificial intelligence to bear on diagnostics and what that can mean for you. So, with no further ado, let's just jump right in because this is exciting stuff, but it's a lot to cover. So let's just jump right into it. First of all, Sergey and Daniel, why should our listeners care? Why do we care about artificial intelligence? It sounds very futuristic, very pie in the sky stuff. Tell us why your average doctor and practice manager should care about this.
Sergey, you want to get started?
Yeah, sure. I was gonna talk about from a standpoint of a customer, because as we're gonna go into this conversation, I think you'll find out that we have a range of customers, from doctors, employers, direct customers. So for my family, for instance, it's been a very cool app to use, our platform, when we just want to find some information, more scientific information, obviously, because we're all scientists here, about particular health situation, before calling even a doctor, even if it's during the day, but especially if during the weekend or after hours. It's a very helpful tool. It's a cool tool to have to find out what's wrong with you, what could be done before even talking to a doctor. So I think my personal opinion is that this particular app informs and educates consumer, and when consumer is educated, she makes the most efficient decisions and the most informed decisions. For doctors, for example, it's also an efficiency tool. So doctors are actually, in my opinion, an easier audience to talk to. We're speaking the same language. They understand science. They understand medical research. This is where we're coming from. For them, it's important to have this AI part where our algorithms making sure that no new research is being missed in their particular area. But also it's a time saver for them. When their patient use our Wellai app, they're very quickly getting on board. We save, in our own estimation, anywhere from 70 to 80% in terms of time when new patient onboards. And we also do the most routine part. So the Wellai asks the initial questions, name, age, weight, but also what's wrong with you. And that leaves the most creative part for the doctors, for the nurses. So that's the attractiveness for them. So this is kind of two groups. I'm not sure if, Daniel, you want to add something to that.
Yeah, I mean, so what are the problems that the doctors are facing, and what is Wellai, right? The problems they're facing are we see a number of core problems, right? It's the burnout. It's the burnout that is exacerbated by all these changes, and the burnout happens because from our research we see that the doctors are doing a lot of repetitive tasks, right? Yeah, they're not, this is not like lifting boxes or laying bricks, but it is very repetitive still. You ask the same questions. It's the same process initially by the time they get to the interesting stuff, a lot of the time has gone by, and they have pressure to see more patients. And I think that's why the job is less fun than it should be. Doctors should be interested in what they do, right? With COVID, that exacerbates things because it creates all kinds of havoc. All of a sudden you get a lot more phone calls, you get fewer visits, but then on sometimes people need an urgent situation, and so your schedules, we hear from doctors, schedules are messed up, right? Sometimes you're it's shifting to telehealth. So you started with a situation where you're in a burnout phase, possibly, or close to it, and then it's exacerbated by all these changes that are happening really, really quickly. It's like there's this phrase from a sci-fi book. It's called future shock, right? Future shock is when the changes are happening so fast, people fail to even grasp what's going on. So what is Wellai? Ultimately, Wellai is a machine that has read over 30 million medical studies. You can say it that way, right? It's a machine that read a whole bunch of medical studies from PubMed. And not only read it, it can summarize it, but more importantly, it can have a conversation with you. It is not meant to replace a doctor. People, and I don't actually like the word artificial intelligence the way people understand it. It is not intelligence. I know there are theories on how there's going to be singularity, and it may
Right.
very well be that it will, dominate humans and do bad things, but not because it's intelligent, right?
This
There's
isn't
plenty of.
Skynet, right? This isn't
I
Ray
mean,
Kurzweil's
it's going to be different.
singularity.
I think it's different than Skynet in the sense that, yeah, exactly, the singularity. If we talk about that, we can have that diversion later. But the point is, the art, it's different, right? It can very well take over humans, but not because it's more intelligent. There's plenty of examples in history, by the way, where less intelligent species rules over more intelligent species. That's actually, I don't want to say it's a rule, but it's certainly not an exception. So, uh, going back to what Wellai is, it is artificial intelligence. I like the term machine learning. It has learned some repetitive things, and what it can do, it can have a conversation. You can speak to it, just like you can speak to Alexa or whatever,
Sure.
and you can say, well, my back's hurting and this is what I'm experiencing. And that's fairly easy. At that point is you recognize the symptoms, you match them to symptoms in a database. But what gets really interesting is that now it has a neural network, and I consists of like 9 neural networks working together. It has a neural network then asks follow-up questions, which is unique, right? Up to a point where you just say something to it and it analyzes it and comes up with an outcome. It's more or less like a symptom checker, but it
Right.
is not a symptom checker. It is very, very different. Why? Because it has symptom checkers don't have conversations with you. They
Right.
don't
It's not
ask
interactive.
intelligent questions. Exactly. And the questions it asks are always different. They depend on your situation, on your history, on your symptoms. It asks, and it's very thorough. It asks more questions than a doctor would, precisely because it's not as smart as a doctor, right? Doctor may ask 4 or 5 follow-up questions, whereas I will ask you probably anywhere 12 to 18. So it can seem, there's a lot of questions you have to answer, but it's trying to be very, very thorough. And what happens at the end is once it gathers all that information, it can come up with the most likely diagnostics. And so if things are serious, it can tell you, okay, let's call a doctor right now, right? Let's talk to a doctor. Or it can give you a choice, let's call a doctor. But it may be that the things that it came up with, none of them on the top of the list are serious, and can say, you know what, you can watch it for a day or two. You can call the doctor later. Right?
Well,
So
that brings up a very interesting point, though. Are
yeah.
we putting Well AI, the application, the machine learning, if you prefer it to artificial intelligence, are we putting it in a position of making life or death decisions, like do or do not call 911?
Well, we're helping a person make the decision. So for example, there could be a case where a person doesn't want to call 911, but the symptoms point to something really, really serious, and that happens frequently. Now, if a person is in distress and it's, and they would call 911 without the app, it doesn't matter what the app says. They'll be at the end. It doesn't cut off anything. It just says, do you want to call a doctor? Now,
Right.
if the situation is serious, emphasize you have to call a doctor.
Right.
So it doesn't really prevent a call in any way. So I don't think it makes that kind of, it doesn't take that kind of decision. Instead, it gives you, again, for those, it's more for the case when somebody doesn't want to call a doctor, but the situation sees
Right.
I sees the serious situation, and it pretty much, encourages strongly to call
Okay. So it won't
911.
push them towards inaction, but it might push them to action, which would always be
Exactly.
erring on the side of that.
Exactly.
Well, what
It's
do you say to
asymmetric that
doctors
way.
who say, well, wait a minute, I don't want to be replaced by, and again, going back to that Skynet thing, what do you say to doctors like, wait a minute, are you trying to replace me? Is this instead of Dr. Jones, you've got Well AI?
Yeah, I really think not. It's not just because I don't want that. I vehemently do not want humans replaced. I'd like to have a doctor. But more importantly, this is not our goal, and it's not even possible. I will assure you that there are a lot of problems that AI can cause for people, a lot of areas it can actually do things, but practice of medicine is science and an art is really, really far away from a computer. I don't believe it will ever happen, because ultimately computers, they don't do anything that requires creativity. I do believe profession of a doctor requires some creativity. So that's kind of my opinion. But going back to our business model, it is really to work with the doctor. If you think about a patient calling you, right now with COVID, maybe 60% of your practice all of a sudden is phone calls. And every time you have to pick up and ask the same questions more or less. Wouldn't it be better if there was an app that did that all for you, did that intelligently, probably erred on the side of caution, asked 3-4 more questions, or 5-6 more questions, and when the patient called you, you see the doctor, when they answer, they see all of the results of the initial conversation. That's really cool. So you save, we talk to doctors, they believe that this is going to save them 15 minutes. And 15 minutes is eternity for a visit.
Oh gosh, that's huge.
Now,
yeah.
I mean, it basically comes to a point where not only you will save time, but you're making a visit much more productive, because some visits last 15 minutes.
Sure.
So what happens? What do you do? Well, then you start with a detailed blueprint, and now you do the art of being a doctor. You start asking interesting questions. You can do much more care. You can be much more human. There's all these things that are not going to cause you burnout, because it's human work. You're not doing the repetitive stuff. So
it's the stuff they went to school for. Right?
Exactly. And so it helps, it helps in the initial phase, and it gets doctor to a point where they can actually practice human medicine.
And Christopher,
that's great, and that's a huge part of it.
Point out that we, in terms of education, we actually try to provide as much as possible to our customers and just to general audience. So we have this trying to stay on 2 blogs per week, and also sometimes doing videos as well. One of them actually, to some extent, it answers your question: human doctors versus artificial intelligence. Actually, we spent some time looking at that. So it's interesting, if you look at history, let's say 40 years ago, we're in the 1970s, right? Compared to now, look how technologically we're more advanced right now. Walk inside any hospital, you have computers, you have robots, you have CAT scans. Do you have fewer doctors now? No, it's the robots and the artificial intelligence, in my view, are actually filling this void, in most cases actually doing the routine job that doctors, as we mentioned before, doctors don't want to do. Doctors are experts in what they do, and they want to contribute from that perspective. So we actually noticed that when we started looking at particular numbers, you use machine learning, for example, algorithms, and you can get to certain accuracy of diagnosis. But then there are certain areas when you actually combine humans with artificial intelligence, you can actually increase that accuracy, for example, of diagnosis, just because it's a very healthy mix. Doctors know what they know, AI knows what it knows. When you combine together, you actually get the best results. So I think the future is, in my view, human doctors working with artificial intelligence, working with robots.
So this is really about taking a lot more of the busy work out of what they do in a given day, which is one of the big contributors to burnout, as we know, which is interesting. That kind of puts it in that overall context of what I'm constantly preaching about: digital transformation and getting people into the business of, as we say, care, not clicks, right? So it's leveraging technology to spend less of your time fiddling around with technology, and ironically enough, right? So that you can go back to doing more of the stuff you went to medical school for as a doctor, which is, the diagnostics that require that creativity and human perspective and human learning. So it's in a way, far from dehumanizing medicine, this is actually putting more humanity back into medicine, is what I hear you say.
Exactly right.
I agree.
Exactly right. And it's the doctors. What does doctor bring to the table? Certainly medical school, but I would vouch that probably even more importantly, the experience of dealing with people, of understanding people, of finding these non-trivial situations. That only comes with experience, with human experience. Now, what does a doctor not do? Well, the doctor doesn't read 30 million medical studies. They don't do that. So the machine does what the doctor... I don't know
where most doctors go to medical school, but I did read 30 million.
But actually, for somebody like you, Dr. E, this tool is very unique. Actually, that's my favorite feature, but perhaps not the most sellable, but whatever. But to me, the coolest part is that you use the app as a doctor, for example. You go through symptoms, right? We give you diagnosis, obviously. Our AI suggests usually, the right diagnosis is on top. But the coolest thing for me is that you can actually click on particular diagnosis and see where that diagnosis is coming from. What's the research behind it? So we actually rank by medical articles. So the top are on top. So you can actually, if you're really curious, you can actually get into that. You can actually start reading the most relevant articles to that particular condition.
That's great. Dr. E, you're the MD in this group here. You're the doctor here. What do you feel if somebody comes to you and brings bringing Well AI into a practice in which you're practicing medicine?
So one of the things, and I just read, or I was listening to an interview about Seth Godin's newest book, right, The Practice, and in it he talks a lot about specifically what you guys just mentioned, right? How any kind of non-human, non-creative work, humans are going to be replaced in doing that, right? Simply because it's more cost effective, simply because it's faster, because it's more efficient, it's less prone to errors. So assembly line work, everyone is going to get replaced, and humans, we will have to figure out human jobs to start doing, or the human component of our jobs, like you were saying. Now, in medicine, you've got symptoms and you've got signs. Signs are stuff that you can measure. All of those things can be done by AI, can be done by robots. A robot, any kind of technology, they can see your temperature, your vital signs, your respiratory rate, your lab results. All of those things, they can be evaluated. But there is not a single machine or artificial intelligence that can really understand a pain scale, for instance, or can really understand, fatigue, or can really understand all these inherent symptoms that makes us human. So that is the part where I think that, more like artificial intelligence, I think what this is doing is really it's augmenting the humanity of the physician, right? Because it allows you to do more faster. It allows you to grab your humanity, your skills, your creativity, and utilize the help of technology to really put everything else together. So I'm actually very excited about this. It makes me think of Tony Stark. Like, you would never think of Tony Stark without his tools and gadgets functioning without him, right?
It enhances his abilities, doesn't exactly? That's right.
So that's a thing.
And this goes back to, if you want to go really old school, really this goes back to economics 101, what Adam Smith taught us 200 plus years ago, comparative advantage, right? For those people with an economics background, it's just the party with the comparative advantage is an artificial intelligence. And this goes to your broader point, Dr. E, not just about this particular application, but about automation in general, which is we're just letting that do what it does comparatively better so that we can spend more time doing what we do comparatively better. And it's not a zero-sum game. And that's one of the great things that we learn from Adam Smith, right? It is not a zero-sum game. When everybody does what they're best at, everybody wins, right? So that I don't see this as a threat to doctors, even from an economics point of view or numbers point of view. I see this as a way to help them thrive even more.
Well, ultimately, there's one more point why that is true. If you think about online medicine, right? Obviously, it's for many reasons it is exploding in use and increasing in use. But there's really doctors need an easy way to utilize their time too efficiently, right? There are downtimes. There are those times when the doctor can help people, but maybe there's some disruption, and all of a sudden, they're expecting a lot of their practice change, and they're not getting the in-person visits that day. And they're sitting here, they can just go with Wellai. Ultimately, where we're going with this is that you'll be able to talk to a doctor just like you can hail a cab through Uber, right? You'll be able to connect with the doctor first, preferably with your personal doctor, but they're not around 24 hours, right? They're not waiting for your situation. All of a sudden, you can pick from other doctors, and you can pick the one you like and have a conversation with them. And it's good for everybody. The patient can get immediate help. The doctor can actually utilize their downtime more efficiently. So I think that that's another reason, right, on top of everything else, where you can just help people online, where this whole thing is going to be pretty massive. And helping online, I think that it doesn't excite or telehealth, right, using the old term, though we like to talk about telehealth as more kind of a video calling where you can see a person, a little bit more humane where that's allowed. But even going back to the old telehealth, many doctors are not too excited about it, right? You don't see a person, you're talking on the phone, maybe the connection isn't great, You have to ask all these questions, before you even get to the interesting stuff. Whereas you utilize more time and time efficiently with Wellai, but at the same rate, when you're talking to somebody, again, you have everything. The whole picture is created for you. You can get to the interesting stuff. Becomes much less of a chore and much less of a pain to give that kind of help to people.
So let's talk practicality here. Let's talk about the practical application. So pretend I'm a doctor. I'm saying, okay, let's tell me about Wellai. Tell me how it's going to work functionally from a practical point of view in my office on a day-to-day basis.
So first of all, you can once you have Wellai, you can send it to your patients. You can send it via email, or if somebody comes into your office, you can just give them a QR code to scan. Immediately, they will get the Wellai app, and they'll be connected to you as their doctor. So let's say you send them a link via email, they click, download the app, and in the app, they're already your patient. That gives them certain privileges, right? That gives them a privilege when they want to go through the digital assistant. Ultimately, they can call you, but they can call you only if you have scheduling there. So it has built-in scheduling. If it's an ad hoc situation, the doctor happens to be available, you can call them. If not, it will tell you that the next available time is in 30 minutes or in 2 hours, and you can decide what to do there. You can also request refills through the app, and that's an important point. Doctor can set up refill requests where a patient, again, it brings it back to the patient a little bit, where they have to answer a couple of questions to make sure that they sort of qualify for that refill. So you just send it out, you get patients on, and then you manage your schedule. And they call you when you're available. When you're available, your smartphone will just ring, and you know that this is your working hours. If let's say you set up an appointment with the patient, they have an issue and you have a spot in 30 minutes, you get a notification that spot is taken. So you know that you have a call then. Once the patient comes into the meeting room, it will say you'll get a notification as a doctor. Your patient is in the waiting room. Talk to them. Then you'll go in and you'll be able to see all the results of the assistant and actually help them real quick. So the first point of the Wellai is to really transform the way you do any kind of distance medicine, online medicine, really. It transforms it. It makes it organized. It makes it neat, all in one place, and it simplifies the billing. What we heard from doctors is, billing is a little bit difficult because patients are not always realizing that the phone call is not free. It used to be free when most of the visits were to the practice, but
Right.
now they call in volume, but they don't always understand how that works. With the app, again, you can tell them and show them without having phone calls with them and telling every one of your 100 patients. In the app, they will see the terms, right, or what the phone call will cost, and they'll be billing, right? We're connecting right now to a back-end platforms to send the bill to the insurance immediately. That's also possible. So I would say the first part we talked about is big transformation, right? This AI or machine learning that read a bunch of studies, millions of studies, in fact, that helps to streamline the whole process and gets the patient to talk to you with the first phase already finished, the repetitive phase. But there's more to it. The app is actually solving a bunch of practice problems in that it brings all of your online medicine into one app. There's reports your assistant can create. You can create refills. You can do kind of billing. There's all kinds of auxiliary benefits from using this kind of gateway, organize your online medicine. And now I think that's as crucial as ever. When we started building it, it was before the pandemic. So we didn't even know it was already important then. We already saw the value for this, but now I think it's kind of a must have.
So, as a technologist, the first thing that comes to my mind when I hear you talking about the billing, the payments, the scheduling, as a technologist in the healthcare sector, what I'm asked, my immediate question is, okay, then it must be talking to their EHR, their practice management platform. To what level of integration are you aiming with this app, and so that to automate as many of those tasks as possible? What are your goals there?
Well, the goals are pretty ambitious. I think at this point we already help a great deal, but ultimately we do what I explained to you is with full seamless billing. Obviously, that's the goal. We're not there yet. We're building out integrations right now, and we're gonna get there. But at this point already, it has ability to do the scheduling, to do all of the online medicine in one place. We are building the billing integrations. Ultimately, we believe that this could be your medicine portal. I will explain to you a couple of futuristic things we're doing. For example, we have ability to understand medical histories with this tool. So I remember how I said there are 9 neural networks working there in concert. Well, there's like at different times, there's like 7 to 9, depending on the situation. One of the first ones is to recognize the text, not the speech recognition. That's fairly trivial now. Like somebody says some words and you can type them up, but the typed text, recognize and convert it into accepted symptoms and actually signs. And it does have, I get what you're saying, Dr. E, about machine not really understanding pain scale or fatigue, but it can understand it on a superficial level, not on the level of a doctor. But on the superficial level, it will recognize if you said fatigue, it will find like a UMLS code for fatigue. Or even if you say I feel tired all the time, it will understand that. So it's a comprehension engine. This comprehension engine can be used to simplify onboarding and conversations, but it can also be used for something else. It can also be used to analyze medical histories. And some of those medical histories are very, very difficult to read. And I would imagine that if it's a new patient to you, you don't want to be sitting there reading, 15, 20 pages or whatever, or even 5, dense pages. We have ability to comprehend that and put it into nice graphs and charts. So that's another thing we're building. You can see from this where you ask us for our goal. Our goal is to become the portal that takes out all of the repetitive things from your life as a doctor and leaves you with that human creative component. So one thing is visualizing medical histories, and there's going to be more stuff. As Steve Jobs said, there's always one more thing. Yeah, go ahead, Sergey.
Yeah, there's one more thing. I wanted to add about telehealth. I think that's part of the our Uber for Doctors story that Daniel mentioned. In the future, I think we're all going to have high quality videos. We would prefer to see the face. It's more social. It's more human. People want to talk, but at the same time, they want to use technology to talk. So I think in some of those features, we're already there. And especially in terms of convenience, as Daniel had mentioned, by the time you actually see the face of your doctor on your smartphone, doctor already knows what's wrong with you, because by that time you already went through our AI questionnaire that Wellai offered, that led you to some kind of result, to some kind of diagnosis. Doctor checks it very quickly. In most cases, may just prescribe something from a pharmacy. It could be a very short call. So that efficiency is already there. But again, we're looking for this future Uber for Doctors. That's definitely part of the conversation. As you know, 71% of people right now in the US, they're afraid to go to doctor's office because of COVID. I was looking at one of the studies that you see in San Francisco. At the end of 2019, only 2% of patients were using telehealth. Now it's way over half.
Oh yeah.
So I think
it's exploded.
And the news. Pfizer and Moderna's definitely close to developing something. But I think a lot of experts agree that things like telehealth are here to stay. So
yeah, we're not going back to the status quo ante. So that number is never going to go back. And I see doctors who are resisting that reality. I've actually seen doctors, for example, on LinkedIn who say, no, as soon as COVID is over, we're going back to that 2% figure. Everybody's going to go flood back into the office and life is going to go on as it merrily was before. No, it's not. It absolutely is not. Even if everybody feels 100% safe and we all develop a super immunity and there's never another pandemic again, people aren't going to give up the convenience now that they understand telehealth. That busy executive who could never squeeze in an hour of therapy because she couldn't spend an hour each way in traffic and parking and all that, and she can now squeeze it in between meetings. She's not going to give up telehealth. That shift worker who had to go unpaid to go see the doctor, get into the office, wait in the waiting room, see the doctor, come back out, gave up 2 to 3 hours of his wages just to see the doctor. He's not going to give that up. He's not going to give up telehealth when this thing is over. Now the genie's out of the bottle and it's not going back in. Speaking of which, is there a telehealth feature integrated into the app itself so that a doctor could actually then initiate a telehealth session within the app?
Exactly. The patient can initiate it if it was scheduled, doctor's available, and the doctor can initiate it as well. But going back to the previous point, it's important, like just as a personal preference, I would prefer that people go to the doctor periodically personally.
Sure.
Like I'm not a person who wants to put everybody in the online, and because
Right.
I do think there's something to be had for that relationship. And I agree with you, Christopher, but at the same time, we're not banking on it being only fully online. We also have capabilities for easy onboarding, right? This app works the same way. You can actually have the patient, have the nurse use it for onboard the patient and go much further in the onboarding process and present the doctor with that same kind of outline that they would through telehealth. But with the telehealth, of course, yeah, there's like you can think of this app is there's AI, right, or machine learning, but it's also a direct communication channel between the doctor and the patient. I'll give you one more example of the thing that we're building that actually is going to be released fairly soon. That's not like far off. We look at the world around us. First, there was social networks, but notice how everything is shifting toward messengers, right? It seems like the messengers are eating the world, if you will. Everybody's on the messenger because it's so convenient. You have this direct connection and it's flexible. You can have groups and you can send videos and video calls. So all of a sudden, I think that even like Facebook, right? Most people, I think, use Facebook Messenger even more than the network itself. So uh, we believe that there should be a direct way, and you alluded to this a little bit, Christopher, not just a video, but the direct way to communicate between the patient and the doctor's office. And so we actually have a chat feature, a really neat chat feature where, sometimes the doctor's not available, but you can send a message, you can see if it's read. It's an assistant that could be looking at these messages, and you can actually come up, with the new method. They could also be billable, right? This is time. If there's a lot of questions being asked and the doctor's not around, but you can have that connection when it's really difficult to make in real life. Even telehealth, right? Doctor may be busy, they may not be able to take your call, but you can immediately right there text a message and get a conversation back, get access to a calendar. So we believe this app, in addition to the time saving and machine learning component, it's like a tunnel, that it's like a more direct connection between the patient and the doctor that manifests in many ways.
Actually deepening the relationship. So here's obvious. Why did nobody do this before?
That's a great question. We with Sergey, we really thought about this. Honestly, I saw a couple of years ago that something like this is possible. I'm a math geek, and so is Sergey. But we've been working in finance most of our lives, and we've done fairly well there. I have another fintech startup that's really doing well. But a couple of years ago, I saw something like this is possible. It was my dream to help people in medicine. I don't know why I have a personal story there, but maybe we'll leave it for another time. The reason I didn't do it is I was sure that like Google or Amazon will come up with this. It was just there. And then I waited and waited for months and months. I'm like, they're not coming up with it. They're not stupid. So the only
Bezos
answer
must
to
have
me
this
is
covered, right?
this is not their priority. Now, at this point, I believe that the work that we've put in, 1 year of work, and it's already being used, and the model is learning now, not just from the studies, but from patients. It would take anybody, even like a Google, probably a year to catch up with this at this point, even if they put a lot of PhDs, because it's, for some projects, you can't put like 30 PhDs, and it's not going to be faster than two.
Well, to go back to economics 101, it's diminishing returns, right?
I was going to say
exactly.
And again, Daniel had mentioned we came from the world of finance. The more I talk to those companies, when you get big, you're looking at the whole menu of financial projects that you're doing. It's it becomes a lot about NPV, where we can get the most value for our shareholders. Those kind of conversations. As you know, a lot of those big tech companies, they work in other industries like pharmaceuticals. They are improving technology for hospitals. For them, and that's okay, because for them, that's what drives their profits. Helping the customer, and that's what we're trying to do: helping the customer, helping the patient, helping the doctor. I don't feel like it's been their priority, and that's why there's been this void. I feel like in what they're doing compared to what we're doing. There's this terms, as you know, Christopher and Dr. E, volume-driven system versus value-based system, right? So volume-based or volume-driven is basically the more patients you have, the better off you are. And I think that's kind of the formula that all these big tech companies been using, and big hospitals. I think for us, it's value-based in a sense that, we want to, as we've been talking all along for this whole conversation, is we're trying to eliminate inefficiencies. We're trying to eliminate the routine for the doctors, for our customers. So in that sense, I think we're contributing to this value-based system.
Well, let's actually explore that a little bit. Put this in the context of somebody who's a doctor's practice that's exploring direct primary care. What does that mean for doctors in that space?
Yeah, well, it's yeah. Go ahead.
Well, just quickly, I mean, it fits right in. In fact, the doctors we're talking to are, have, this kind of model, or looking at this kind of model, for obvious reasons, right? Because it is, again, just the word direct, and the way I described it is a direct connection between, anything that connects you directly to a patient more will help that. But go ahead, Sergey.
No, I was gonna say it comes back to the argument I made right in the beginning of the conversation, as you recall, Christopher. My point was that, and again, it's my personal opinion, just for disclosure, I'm actually still on Aetna, my family, because of my previous employer, because this is my new venture, and at some point I'm gonna phase out. But just 2 days ago, I got a new bill from Aetna, and I was telling you about the lack of information on the side of this, what I call big five insurance companies. They just basically blindly raise their premiums, like no explanation given. At least in my case, I saw what the numbers are. We talked to some of the customers. They have no idea. They basically go into the next fiscal year not knowing what the price is going to be. And this is a unique feature, I feel like, in this industry. As Daniel mentioned, we came from different industry. In finance, you sign a contract, you know what the terms are, right? In healthcare, the unique feature is that sometimes you sign, you don't know what you're signing. If you're a customer, you don't know what the price is going to be for next year. In my case, I actually know, and it's 6.3% increase. I actually went through to the spreadsheet. No question given. So I feel like at some point, people are just getting sick of kind of being treated like that. And again, I don't want to.
No pun intended.
They're good people in insurance companies, and we talk to some of them. But there could be situations where this inefficiencies exist, and people looking for solutions. People want to be informed, and that's where direct primary care comes in, because it's more straightforward, it's more value-based. Another thing I want to mention, actually, it came up in a conversation yesterday. I think with the direct primary care, we're gonna have more tools for the consumer, hopefully. I think, and I hope that's where it's going. For example, not many people know, but I was just looking at that. I'm not a lawyer, but there's a new IRS law that went in effect on January 1st, which is essentially the spirit of the law is that, and I want people to know this, that if you are part of the employer healthcare plan and you want to move to another plan, just as an employee, employer can actually pay for that. They're and according to this law, they're actually supposed to. Right now, it's through the HRA and HSA accounts and other benefit accounts. But in general, I think we're moving toward this hopefully more consumer-based system when consumers actually decides what to do with his or her insurance.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of numbers, one of the things I've been following you guys for a while on social media, and one of the running themes I've seen in your blogs and posts is this. It reminds me of the Geico here in the United States, the Geico thing. Was, how would you like to save 15% on your car insurance? Well, you guys are throwing around this figure. How would you like to save 34 to 45%? Where are you getting those numbers, and how does Wellai make those hard dollars?
Yeah, so we actually spent some time. It could be difficult for a newcomer to convince people. Okay, so here's what you do, guys. Seems cool, seems very neat, but I want to see some numbers. For me personally, it's the numbers, but also the experience. As I mentioned, my family uses the app. I think it's beneficial just to have the app. And to know that you have this ability to access this cool technology any time of day 24/7. for many employers we're talking to, for them it's actually morale booster. This year has been tough year. We just had elections, we have COVID, people losing their jobs. And so for some of those folks who are, may not be doing so well financially, this is a morale booster. Look, we're offering you something that's beneficial to your employees, to their families, to the children. So that's one aspect. In terms of numbers, it just happened that you also, on average, save along the way. So as Daniel had mentioned, we're offering an array of features. So a lot of it's coming from a simple fact that, look, you have this tool in front of you. So in many situations, you can actually avoid, especially these days when people don't want to go into doctors' offices and actually ER rooms for sure, you can actually avoid that in many cases. And, we've done research, so anywhere from 14 to 18% of AR and GP visits being prevented by using an app or platform like Wellai. So when you add all these numbers, another factor is chronic disease management. We have a tool that actually makes sure that people with certain chronic disease actually stay on top of their intakes. And we actually, because again, we're researchers, we're scientists, we come to this program how to manage certain chronic diseases from a scientific standpoint. So in this country, for example, in the US, 1 in 3 people have some kind of chronic disease. If you move in a higher age cohort, that number increases dramatically, as you know. So that's also where an employer could have potential savings. We talk about telemedicine. Again, we're trying to be conservative. We're already assuming people have access to telemedicine. So we're saying if you use our science-based sort of telehealth 2.0, as we call it, you would have those savings because, again, of all of the technological efficiencies that we just talked about. So all in all, another factor is indirect cost because, people, and it's not just Wellai, it's just in general health education. People become more educated. People use apps like Wellai and other. I mean, we're not pretending we're the only ones. Mm-hmm. They know more. They want to learn about how to become healthier. That's where this indirect costs come in that you cannot really see, but we've done some research. I went through 28 different studies looking at the economic costs of all these digital tools. And things like absenteeism and presenteeism, people have criticism of those, how you measure those. But in general, it's sort of intuitive, when you take care of your health, your company saves costs because you become more productive.
Mm-hmm. And when you're aware of it too, and that's one of the things that we see, things that we're involved in, remote patient monitoring is an analogous situation there. When people know that when they're more engaged with their health and they know that it's the sort of the observer effect, when you're engaged and you know that your doctor's engaged and you kind of know that you're being monitored directly or indirectly. When you have a chronic condition like diabetes, people are just, and the studies back this up, people just tend to make better choices, right? And I think this is one of the ways that can help them engage on that. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about you as a company. You guys are in startup phase, sounds like. Where are you in terms of full launch mode, in terms of fundraising? Where are you as a startup, as a business?
Well, we're basically took the slightly different path. Most startups, what they want to do is they kind of want to scream very loud about a product that doesn't exist and try to get financing on the basis of that and then hope that it kind of works. We're a little bit different in that, first of all, we're scientists and we really wanted to make sure that it works before we talk to anybody about this. So we spent a good 11 months working on the tool before showing it to people. Once we were sure that all our back testing, all our qualitative testing and quantitative testing is in order, then we started doing the business phase, which was only like a month and a half ago, a couple of months ago. It's also easier for us to do in Sergey because we do have a history. He worked at some big time investment houses. I also did, and then I have another startup that's doing pretty well. So we didn't need, we're not like out of school where we need just, $50,000 to make things work. So we were able to build that, but now we're going into a different phase. We're talking to networks of doctors. We're talking to a couple of employers as well. So our first goal is to get a number of these clients under our belt, right? The doctors, the employers, because those are people we can talk to without spending $1 million, on the rollout strategy and all this stuff. The individuals for now will come through doctors and employers, but we are starting to fundraise, and pretty soon we will have first clients. And at that point, we're looking to raise enough money to turn this truly into kind of Uber for doctors, where Uber for doctors is a big platform. Technologically, it's basically built, but there are legal costs, there are marketing costs that will come there that at that point are fairly significant. And that's where we are. So right now we're in the phase where we're getting our first clients. I think we're really close. We're starting a big pilot, in fact, this Friday with the doctor network. And then in parallel, we're starting to do fundraising. And we're thinking that within the next 3-4 months, we're getting first clients and we're getting the fundraising, and the platform is already built. Then we start, going after that Uber for doctors concept, which is, pretty ambitious. Yeah. But we first go in order. We first get these first clients and get these spaces like doctors and employers.
I think we're doing it the right way. Startups chasing investors, obviously, we are not doing that, at least not as intense, I would say. I actually also follow you, Christopher, on social media. You had this post, chasing people for ideas or products.
Right.
I actually agree with you. We're not chasing everybody. I've noticed people we end up working with or partnering, like yourself, there are people of the same mindset, I would say. They're talking about the future of technology, and the same thing about investors. Like I'm talking to a few. We actually prefer people who would be on the same page with us, that share our philosophy, the philosophy that we just outlined in this podcast. And it seems like this is exactly the way it's been shaping up, because at the end of the day, we want investors to also get return on their money and also make them happy. So if they're on the same page with us, if they actually may even give us some advice sometimes, what's the best thing to do from their perspective, I think that's a healthy development, as opposed to blindly, as you said in your social media, chasing people down.
Right. Speaking of working with people who get it, so are you working, for example, with insurance brokers? What are your relationships there?
Yes, it's interesting, because initially, we are data scientists, we're researchers. We built something cool, so we thought we're just gonna go directly. But the way the industry is structured is very interesting, and especially with the value proposition, with this value-based healthcare proposition that I was talking about. We find a lot of allies in the insurance broker area, and what's interesting there, as you know, Christopher, there are different kinds of brokers. Some of them are, I would say, more traditional. They're being paid a fee, as you know, for their service. Some are more value-based. They're looking to actually align themselves maybe with particular employers. At this time, we're actually talking to both. We thought we're maybe fitting our business model better with value-based, maybe places like Health Rosetta. Right now, I feel like they're really progressive people across the board. Sometimes we talk to clients, they're like, oh, I've worked with this really great broker. In one case the other day, somebody told me since 1998, but I really like your cool app, guys. Can you work with that broker? We start talking to the broker. We actually have understanding. I think they understand that the industry is moving toward customer more, toward value-based healthcare. And what's a lot of these inefficiencies that are happening right now are not sustainable. And so brokers also understand that they're educated folks, they're experienced people, and so a lot of interesting conversations, so a lot of positive conversations, and I'm very happy about that.
Well, wonderful. Dr. E, any other questions from your side?
Well, as I was sharing earlier, this is a kind of technology that I'm very excited about, and I think that if in a couple of years when we look back at 2020, one of the things that we're going to be able to rescue from this huge mess of a year so far is going to be the fact that as an industry in healthcare, we were pushed to finally embracing these kind of technologies, and especially on the remote care, right? So I think one of the things that we've been talking about in this conversation is about convenience and about patients aren't going back. And even if doctors are still hanging on to the idea that as soon as this is over, we're going to go back to what we were before, patients are not going to go back because they've experienced this. We've finally been able to do something that has been technologically available for a long time, but because there's so much red tape in the industry and because there's so many other difficulties here, right? Legislations and all sorts of things. Now finally we were forced to look past these things, right? And I think that as we see more technology like Wellai and different telehealth providers, and we're going to start seeing some remote diagnostic devices, and we're going to start seeing some remote therapeutic devices, I think that technologies like these that can augment a doctor's presence elsewhere and that can put a doctor in your pocket, because we're all carrying one of these. And I don't see the reason why we wouldn't be able to just plug in a device into our phone that is going to start grabbing our clinical data and that is going to start interpreting it, and then is going to give our doctor a summary so that when the doctor says your patient is ready to see you, the doctor can have a complete summary of all the things that he or she's going to ask that patient, and then just ask some very precise questions and go on with the diagnosis and the treatment plan. And that's the part where I'm very excited about, because that is going to fundamentally change how we deliver healthcare, and that is going to decentralize and the access to high quality care, because also that transcends state lines, that transcends country lines. That really opens up the gate for medical tourism, like I've been telling people, because right now you are forced to seeing the doctors that are in your zip code, right? Because you're not going to go to a different city just to see a pediatrician. But once we start seeing doctors here, it literally is the exact same experience to see a doctor that is 3 offices down the hall from yours than it is to see a doctor across the country or across the world. So that is where it's, and that just brings us back to the fact that the creative part of being a physician is never going to be replaced. And it is the smart doctors that are going out there and they're really building, like I always say, building a brand, building a presence, educating patients, positioning themselves, that now are going to be able to choose their patients from literally all over the world. And this is a super exciting time because now everybody will have access to top-notch physicians.
It's a brave new world. Yeah.
And on that point, I will say that we didn't focus in the podcast, but as we were building the models, our goal was to be global from the get-go. And the way we build them, I'm not going to get into the kind of the math of it, but the way we build them is we made it fairly easy to translate into a new language. Now, generally, these kinds of models are very difficult. You basically have to build a whole new model for a different language, which may take months. Where we build it such that it takes only about 15, for a couple of weeks really to try. We translate it into a new language. We're talking to hospitals in India right now already. They got interested, so it doesn't limit us. We can build a model. In fact, they're asking for 2 models. One in Hindi and one in Tamil, right, Sergey?
Mm-hmm.
This
Yep.
is a different language there. So I think it's our ambition.
Yeah, India
really
is
with
interesting.
this
They
is
have
global.
68 languages, so it's
Yeah. Yeah, and it doesn't take a lot. The way we build it, there's some tricks we had to do, but it works as well in a different language as in English, and it takes some work, but not nearly as much as we had to replicate it for every language, which normally for these types of models you have to do.
Well, guys, thank you so much. This is really exciting stuff. And when we publish the episode, folks will be able to see some links there to some of the studies that we've been referencing in this conversation and to some of the blog articles that have been referenced. So, guys, I just want to thank you, Sergey and Daniel, for joining us today and talking about this exciting new frontier, really, that's going to help doctors avoid burnout and give better outcome for their patients as well.
Now, just before we say goodbye, where can a doctor who's listening to us right now go and find out more about Wellai?
Yeah, you can go to our
website.
Website, wellai.health. We have
Wellai, so wellai.health.
We also have presence on social media. It's LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. And we just started on YouTube. So basically, I think covered everything except TikTok. But it's coming.
Looking forward to it. Looking forward to seeing you guys do some crazy stuff on TikTok.
Some TikTok videos, yes, for doctors.
Okay, great. Well, we'll publish all those for folks looking at the episodes. We'll publish all those social media links as well for our listeners. They can follow up with you. And really recommend folks follow the company and Sergey and Daniel on LinkedIn as well. They've always got interesting posts coming out, so it's a great resource. Great. Well, guys, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Dr. Thank you, Christopher.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Listeners.
All right, guys. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.